up in Maine, actually.
Is that right? Yep, I've been
Yeah.
in Boston all my life. Let me just get online because I want to get all of this on live here. I'm really very excited to have you on.
Thanks very much. It's anytime I get to do anything in Boston, I'm excited. So
Tim Constantine is here. Tim, first of all, I really have admired you as a radio talk show host. You were on a radio station in Boston, carried your show for a while. That station disappeared for some reason, unfortunately. But when you were there, I made it a point to listen to you as much as I could. And I found you to be one of the most brilliant talk show hosts, both in terms of your thinking and your ability to articulate, but also your delivery, your style you just are a consummate radio host. You're one of the greats. I'm so pleased and tickled to have you here today.
my
Uh,
head is going to explode if you keep talking. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
before we get into the topic today, which is your new book, I just want to also mention that you brought up several things that really made me think about things, and I investigated further. And one of those was that you said at that time that you predicted that within 3 to 5 years, pedophilia would be normalized in the society.
I
And
did.
you referred to this as the next kind of envelope of the sexual revolution. And, I really did some investigating of that. And I found that you are so right that it's basically the agenda being that pedophilia is going to be referred to as an orientation as opposed to a perversion.
It's if you look in schools all across the country now, they have strippers, they have transgender people reading stories. They have why I'm telling an 8-year-old anything that has to do with sexuality as part of their schooling is beyond me. Unless
Oh,
you are trying to normalize it, there's no reason whatsoever to do that. When I was a kid, you were a kid, we watched Bugs Bunny. It never occurred to me what Bugs Bunny's sexual orientation was. I was just giggling and laughing at the comedy.
Oh, it's really a despicable agenda. I mean, a moral society protects the innocence of its children, and I think that's something that, you would think conventionally we all would agree to. Liberal, conservative. It's kind of a something that transcends that because we all have children.
Right.
We all want to protect our children. So you are the author of a new book here. That being white guys are okay too. By the way, I should mention Tim Constantine is an award-winning writer at the Washington Times. He broadcasts the Capitol Hill show from Washington D.C. It's a syndicated program. You might want to check it out. It's amazing. So Tim, I mean, even before we talk about that, I have to get your take on the convention. I mean, I'm sure you probably slogged your way through it as I did.
It's cruel and unusual punishment. I'm
Oh,
Catholic. I'm counting on this as time off from purgatory.
yeah, really, exactly. It's points when you go to when you reach the pearly gates. um, yeah, it was so dreadful. I mean, they're trotting out Bill Clinton, to talk about chaos in the White House,
Right.
and meanwhile, the very same day, these pictures come out with him and one of Jeffrey Epstein's sex slaves. I
Getting them
mean,
aside.
and then Elizabeth Warren opening up the caucus for Native Americans. Here she is. I mean, did they ask her about how she got tenure at Harvard? I
Right.
mean, it's bizarre.
Well, what I think is funny is this is supposed to be looking toward the future. The Democratic convention is telling us we're the future. We need to change. We need to get away. We need to have fundamental change, as Bernie says. And yet, when I look at the lineup they've had, Bill Clinton was first getting his sexual harassment accusations in the 1970s. We got Colin Powell, who's been around forever, John Kerry, who was first elected in the 70s, Joe Biden himself, of course, first elected way back almost 50 years ago. There's nothing new about this. There's nothing new at all about this. Elizabeth Warren is 1,000 years old. Bernie Sanders is 1,000 years old. The only person that was young that got on that stage was AOC, and they only gave her 60 seconds. And some people have said they think that's because they were afraid. That was like the risk factor. All right,
Mm.
we think we can go 60 seconds, and there's only a small chance that she will make some horrific blunder. I think they only gave her 60 seconds because that's the attention span of her followers.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's about her own attention span as well.
Uh,
You're in Washington, and I think that what I'm going to say is obvious to everyone, including supporters. But Joe Biden does not appear to be well. He appears to be in an intermediate stage of dementia, which is a sad thing. I mean, I can speak to that. My father had that. It's not. It's almost sad to see him up there fumbling, and it's a condition that only gets worse. It's a progressive, if you will, medical condition. How can they, in conscience, put this man up there and say that he's to be the president? What is that about?
at the opening of last night's convention, they had all these people of color, people of gender, people of whatever from all over the country who were elected officials on the local level. Either they were a state rep or they were a city councilman. And they had this canned thing that they all put together. And one of the phrases they used several times was trying to make Joe Biden seem like he was in touch with the regular guy. Is they talked about the tragedy with his family 50 years ago. They talked about different issues, of course, the tragedy with his son dying young. And they said, Joe Biden will never forget what it was like, blah, blah, blah. And they'd go on to the next topic. Joe Biden will never forget. And I thought, if it's me, and I have a candidate who appears to have dementia, I am not going to keep using the phrase Joe Biden will never forget.
I know, really. He's forgotten what he said in the last sentence. I mean, it's sad. I'm not
It's
saying
really,
this
really
to be
difficult. He's
critical.
a nice man. I do not want him as president. Joe Biden's a nice man, and to watch him deteriorate this way, it's really rough to watch.
Well, it brings up an issue of I mean, they obviously know this, and yet they want to put him in the White House. It kind of brings up questions of who's going to be really running the show over there.
Hello, I'm Joe Biden. Yes, I mean it's the puppet. And I think we had this actually. I'm a resident of the state of Florida, even though I work out of D.C. And in the 1990s, Lawton Childs began to decline. Lawton Childs, longtime moderate Democrat senator, then became governor, was later replaced by Jeb Bush. But when he was in there, then he beat Jeb Bush when they ran against each other. But the next election, Jeb Bush won, but not against Lawton Childs. But Lawton Childs, the last year and a half, 2 years, Buddy McKay was really the governor. Buddy McKay was lieutenant governor. And if you knew politics and if you were behind the scenes, you were aware that every conversation that was happening behind the scenes was with Buddy McKay. Childs actually died about 3 months, 4 months before his term ended. But he was not in touch. He went fishing. He did whatever. He was not in any way engaged for the last year and a half of his life. And that's what I see happening with this Joe Biden presidency is I think Kamala Harris wasn't chosen because they needed someone to get the woman vote. She wasn't chosen because they were wondering whether or not they were going to win California. They already know they're going to get those. They chose her because they think that's who they want to be president when Joe Biden isn't. And everybody seems to see that he's on a pretty limited timeline.
And normally in elections, it would be the more liberal members and Democrats who would say that we have to have a health check of the candidates. I mean, and you'd be the ones spreading rumors, right? I mean, they claimed that John McCain had cancer and that kind of stuff. I mean, this is how they play ball. But you brought it up to Kamala Harris, and your book, White Guys Are Okay Too, deals with the ongoing race dialectic that the left has been pulling out of the hat since who knows when. And yet Kamala Harris, there was just a poll release, I think, by Rasmussen, which indicates that something like upwards of 35% of African Americans polled were not on board with Kamala Harris.
Right. She's not black enough.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. She's not. She doesn't have the street cred. First of all, she was at the time not by conservative standards, but by San Francisco standards, Northern California standards. She was a tough prosecutor and she was a tough attorney general, and so on. So they didn't. A lot of folks in the minority community do not like strict law and order, so they don't approve of that. but also she's half Indian, and that doesn't go over so well in the minority community, certain segments of the minority community, which I don't understand at all. But that's what all the polling data tells us.
I also think that younger people, millennials, are turned off by what was brought out by Tulsi Gabbard during the primary, and that is that Kamala Harris, as district attorney and attorney general, put upwards of 1,500 young men, predominantly minority, in prison for minor marijuana possession. And if we had an honest media, they might investigate whether or not this had any connection to the privatized prisons in California, and that those same privatized prisons might be, shall we say, big donors to the Democratic Party in that state.
Right.
And
And of course, the irony is she also went on the radio and talked about how, at the same time she was doing that, she was smoking a little weed herself, listening to Snoop Dogg, so
oh,
her
exactly.
credibility is in question. I think if you are, of course, I'm conservative. I'm going to question. I know, some people are going to say, oh, you're going to give her a hard time no matter what. But you just made the point. If we had an honest media, if we had the CBS, the ABC, the NBCs of the world just do investigative reporting the same for both sides rather than advocate for one side or the other, we would know a whole lot more than we do about Kamala Harris.
That's right. And it's also the fact that she did not prosecute real criminals, particularly the people like Harvey Weinstein. I mean, I think she might have a little bit of a Me Too problem. Not personally necessarily, but certainly, we don't know, but certainly in the realm of letting off the hook, for example, the Catholic Church pedophile scandal, which was not touched in her 14 years in office. And you had a guy there, like in Boston, we had Cardinal Bernard Law, who had a big problem and who
Right.
had to leave town. In California, there was nothing done under her watch to help investigate these crimes.
We all have our strengths and weaknesses. And I think one of her weaknesses was when she got her start. I'm not breaking any news here. This is well known, but when she got her start in politics in the local political office, she was having an affair with Mayor Willie Brown. She was having an affair with the mayor of San Francisco, and it was an open secret. I mean, they went out together, they went to events together. This was not secret. So I think it's very hard, if you want a political future, to prosecute someone on moral crime when you are already crossing some of those borders yourself. And I think it would have been difficult for her, in good conscience, to be prosecuting some of those crimes without getting examined more closely herself, which could have interfered with her ability to move up the ladder. So I think your point is a valid one. I think it's a really good one. And I think when you look at why did she not do that, maybe it's contributions, maybe it's money, or maybe it was just selfish interest.
I mean, it seems like it's part of a pattern of just being a bit of a hack and a fixer, playing the game of the powerful in her state. She tends to go whichever direction benefited power. I mean, it was, even I think it was Dinesh D'Souza recently, as an Indian, said that her mother, quotes of her basically saying, "Oh, she has to kiss up to power.
Right.
That's her job." I mean, it's some terrible quotes there. But anyway, getting back, Tim, she will be groomed as the president of the United States. I mean, she's,
If Biden wins, she'll be the president within 2 years.
oh
I'll
yeah,
say it
no,
pretty quick.
absolutely. And so your book is White Guys Are Okay Too. We've seen this dialectic played out where everything comes down to a microscopic examination of trying to find something racist. That somebody in 1959 was seen in a hotel lobby standing next to David Duke or something, and all of a sudden they're destroyed, right? And and this kind of microaggression thing, which I think actually goes to the fact that racism in this country has been reduced to such an extent that they have to resort to this kind of thing to find it. They have to put everyone under a magnifying glass. And under siege, of course, is white males who are not genuflecting properly to the left side of the establishment.
Yeah, and my wife teases me, and she said, "Well, Tim, you're a middle-aged white guy, so are you just?" I said, "Yes, but who better to make the argument than someone who is living this?" Here's the irony for you. I lived for a year in Africa. I lived in Ghana, and I was literally the only white guy in town. And so on occasion, most people were very, very nice all the time. But on occasion, I would be treated differently because of the pigment of my skin. Sometimes, usually worse, occasionally better because of the pigment of my skin. But and in some of my other worldwide travel, same thing. I was in Mauritius, which is a little island country off the bottom of the south of South Africa. It's like 90% Indian. It's about 6% black, and then there's a little sliver of white people that live there. And I was visiting some folks there, and they said, "Well, let us take you out and show you the island." And they drove me as an Indian family. They drove me to the neighborhood, and there was one in the entire country where the white people lived, and they thought that's what I would be interested in because I was white. Not that I would want to know anything about the country. I wanted to go where the white people was. I took no offense at it, but the point is, it doesn't matter where you go on earth. There is racism, some of it intentional and mean-spirited, some of it unintentional, like the family that took me to that neighborhood. They didn't mean anything bad by that, but they were thinking in terms of race. And so we didn't invent this in the United States, where different people of different cultural backgrounds, you and I are from New England, the Irish and the Italians hated each other for years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The Protestants and the Catholics would go, "Oh, you're going to marry a Protestant girl? What?" Human beings have a great way of finding someone to disagree with, but we didn't invent this in the United States. So the first, in the introduction, I don't know, it's 3 pages, 4 pages that I have of just example after example after example, where mainstream media is trashing white guys. And there are some examples from the left, Salon Magazine or something, you would expect them to say that. But if I pick up Time Magazine or I tune into CNN, I shouldn't see someone saying the white guy, literally saying the white guy is the most danger, is the greatest danger to America. No, we're not. And right. So my son and I get joking about this. We saw one of these about a year ago, and we get joking going, I don't know, white guys are okay too, aren't they? And that was the genesis of the book, is we thought, wait a minute, there might be something there. And I sat down and I wrote it out. And the book is very clear that there are people of all races that have done really well. And there are people of both genders that have done really well. But part of that is white guys, whether that's inventing Coca-Cola or penicillin or inventing basketball, or, we've done some stuff that an awful lot of people enjoy around the world. And we like to remind people of that.
Well, they run on this whole theory of so-called white privilege, and I think that to an extent that is true, in that the United States was, a white supremacist society up until maybe right around World War II. In that,
Right.
You did stick out if you were not seen as white, if you didn't pass as white. My grandparents did everything they could to pass as white. I mean, that's you wanted to be part of the accepted society. But I think that changed. It changed with in the culture. It changed with the civil rights movement, which was a Christian and Protestant movement. It changed with Jackie Robinson on the Brooklyn Dodgers. It changed with the Army being integrated by President Truman. And I think that today this is a great time to be a minority in this country if you want to achieve. The opportunities are endless if you want to make something out of your life. It's I don't deny the fact that we don't still have racism, and that people have race conflict, and that they're racially conscious. That, as you say, that's part of life. But the idea of continuing to act like we're in pre Civil War South. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, the correctness on all of this. I mean, to your point there, you do have racists in society. We always will. There will always be some guy, some person who is just nasty and who is mean and so on. I was driving from Florida to Maine this summer, and I stopped to get gas in South Carolina. There were 2 good old boys that were filling up they had a boat on a trailer, and they were filling up the engine in their motorboat. They were going fishing. And The stuff they were saying couldn't have been more racist. It was ugly, it was nasty, and I peered around at them, and they saw me, and then they engaged me in conversation. And my son was entertained because communicating is what I do, so I kind of drew more out of them just to see how outrageous they would be without saying anything myself. And my God, the things they said were terrible. They were disgusting. Racism does exist, but it's not societal. It's not the entire society. We, as a society, we elected Barack Obama twice. I didn't vote for him, but
Right.
the nation did, the country did.
Yeah.
And so clearly our society is colorblind in that regard. And I would just say, you mentioned it's a great time to be a minority in America. It's a great time to be in America. No matter who you are, white, black, man, female, whatever. It's a great time to be alive. And I've got a good friend from Michigan, and we joke and say, we hit the jackpot being born at this moment in time and being born in the United States of America. We could not have been luckier, and that's true for everyone. And I wish in the census that we didn't measure, okay, are you Asian? Are you black? Or what if we just all found how many Americans there were? Because my friends of any ethnic background all want the same thing. They want their kids to do really well. That's number one priority. We all want our kids to do well. There's nothing different if you're black or white or Asian or anything else. Everybody wants their kids to do well. And, and then you go from there. You want to be comfortable. You want to have a certain way of life. You want to have certain freedoms. Everybody wants those things. So why we keep divvying it up, other than because somebody might win an election if they cut it up, why we keep divvying it up by the color of our skin just really is silly. So the book is, an answer to those who criticize white guys generically, but we try to do it with good humor. I don't know if you've seen the cover. We've got caricatures rather than hard, serious historical photos. We have caricatures of everybody in there. So it's all in good fun. It's historically accurate, 100% historically accurate. But we use a little sarcasm. We have a little fun throughout the whole book.
You have to, and also we're all so sensitive now that if you hear somebody say something racist, it's almost like that is traumatic and that it's hurt you. And this is just I'll just give a brief example. Like my late father was Jewish, and back in the '60s he wanted to have a boat and join a yacht club. And back then there were anti-Semitic yacht clubs in Boston. He couldn't find one, so he got together with other Jewish guys who wanted to have boats, and they opened their own yacht club. And that yacht club turned out to be one of the best yacht clubs in Greater Boston.
Yeah.
So it's like, and fine. I mean, you just sort of, it doesn't ruin your life. You work with what you have and you make something out of yourself.
Well, I'm of Irish descent, and in the old days, when I was in political office, I used to go, and one of the things I would do each year when I would speak to the NAACP, I would give a little history lesson on the Irish. And I would talk about how the Irish not were casually discriminated against, but blatantly discriminated against. No Irish need apply. But we'd go through that and point out that, you work with what you got. That's what you just said. You do what you can. And in the Irish case, they went into law enforcement. They went into certain areas where then they could get a foothold and start to pull themselves up. But, whether you're Jewish or whether you're Irish or whether you're black, or somebody is going to be cruel to you at some point in your life. It's not fair. It's not right. But, we got to try to minimize it as much as we can. But as an individual, we also got to keep moving forward.
Exactly. All right, Tim Constantine, let my listeners and viewers know where they can get your excellent book and where they can get more information about your great show.
Absolutely. You can go to timconstantine.com. That may be the easiest place to find all of the above. The book is available anywhere fine books are sold, Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, you name it, you can find it. White guys are okay too. And Charles, this is, God, I could talk with you all day, man. This is easy.
Listen. Thank you so much, Tim. I'm really very happy, very honored, and it's great talking to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Take care.